So today's lesson is multiplying monomials, and that's what our objective is today. So notice here, when they're explaining this, we're going to remember that when you have something raised to a power, if I have x to the third power, what that means to me is you are going to take x and you're going to turn it into 3 factors or multiply it by itself 3 times. Same thing here with x to the 5th. You would repeat multiplying x 5 times. Now, notice if you were to go back and count how many x's you see, notice you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So x to the 8th power, and there's 8 factors. So what this is leading to is showing us the rule for exponents of product of powers is when you multiply two numbers that have the same base, you are going to add their exponents. So notice here, a to the m times a to the n. That would mean that there's m factors here, n factors here. To get your answer, you take m plus n. So here they took on the previous example where we had a 3 and a 5, 3 plus 5, and that's how they get the power of 8. So in this little blue box here, this is your rule for exponents for product of powers. So you take the exponents and you add them. Now, if you ever blank out, you can always expand it, and you could write out x however many times. So like, for example, here, this is the same thing that they did above. The shortest way to do this is take the exponents, 3 plus 5, and you get x to the 8th. But again, if you forget, expand it. X to the third means x, x, x. X to the 5th means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then remember, all of them are being multiplied. So you could put dots in between. And then if you needed to go back and count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 x's are there. And you would write it with an exponential form, so x to the 8th. For part B, you're just going to take the 7 plus 4. You're applying this rule, and it becomes b to the 7 plus 4, which is b to the 11th power. So when you have the same base, all you do, and you're multiplying them, is take the exponents and add them. Now let's look at example 2. Not only do we have variables with exponents, but we also have coefficients. So when you have a number in front of your variable, you are going to multiply those, but we add the exponents of the letters. So here I'm going to multiply 3 times 4, and I get 12. And then for the power on the letter n, I will add 2 plus 4 and get n to the 6th. Let's try another example. This one looks a little bit more complicated, but again, my process is the same. I'm going to multiply the coefficients, but I'm going to add the variable exponents when I multiply. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to find my coefficients. So I'm going to multiply negative 3 times 5. And I get negative 15. And then I'm going to go and find all my letter A's. And I'm going to add their exponents. Remember, if a variable does not have an exponent, you assume there's a 1 there. So a to the 3rd times a to the 1st is going to give me a to the 4th power. And then for the b's, notice you have a b squared and a b to the 4th. And when you're multiplying them, you will add their exponents. So this will become b to the 6th. So for example 4, I can either choose to multiply that 20 times 12 and the 3 times 15 and divide it, but then I'm going to get a really large number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify before I multiply. So the variables, however, there's nothing to simplify from the denominator, so I'm actually just going to add the variable exponents, but I'm going to simplify those coefficients. So I can do it diagonally. just like you would do when it's a normal fraction. So I'm going to simplify the 20 and the 5. I can divide 5 by 5 and get 1. 20 divided by 5 and change that 20 to a 4. Then I can also do the 3 and the 12. Make this a 1, make this a 4. Now I'm not multiplying super huge numbers and then also having to divide. So I'm going to multiply 4 times 4, and I get 16. And now I'm going to go back and I'm going to add my variable exponents. So I'm going to grab my x's, and x squared times x to the 3rd is going to give me x to the 5th. Then I'm going to go back and grab my y's. I have a y to the 1st and a y to the 5th, which will give me y to the 6th. So this is how we're going to go about simplifying these and multiplying these. Now, example 5 is actually going to combine both lessons. We're going to multiply first, and then we're going to add. So we always follow order of operations. So I will multiply this one first, and then I'll multiply this one. Once I get my answers from both of those, then I will add them if they are like terms. If they do not have exactly the same exponents, I can't combine them. So for the red that I've put a little line underneath, I'm going to multiply the coefficients. So 3 times -2 is -6. And then I'm going to add my x's. So that becomes x to the 6th. And then I'm going to add my y's, y to the 7th. And I'm going to do the blue one. I'm going to multiply. There's an assumed 1 here in front of the x cubed. So I get 8. And then add the x's. So 3 plus 3 is 6. And then 2 plus 5 is 7. Notice now they have exactly the same letters with exactly the same exponents. So now my final step is I can add these coefficients. So -6 plus 8 is going to give me a final answer of 2, x to the 6th, y to the 7th. So this is how we multiply and add all together. So remember, when you're adding and subtracting polynomials, in order to add things, they have to be like terms. We do not add exponents when we're adding and subtracting. You only add the exponents when you multiply and divide. Any questions on this? Let me try a couple of the oral exercises. So for example, on number 1, I'm asked to multiply x squared times x to the 5th. Remember, you will add the exponents. So this will become x to the 7th. Then for the next, let me jump down to number 9. I'm going to multiply the coefficients. So 2 times 3 is 6. And then I'll add the x exponents and get x to the 5th. Let's see. Let's try this number 19 on the oral exercises. Notice there, I'm multiplying a negative times a negative. So that will become a positive t, and then I add 3 plus 3. So just be careful also with your signs. Any questions on the multiplication? Okay, so your homework for that section is 1 through 52 all. Now, this officially isn't due until Thursday. However, you have a quiz on this, so I highly recommend that you maybe get started on it if you've already finished the adding and subtracting. So your homework is officially the adding and subtracting homework.